Hey everyone, Matt here from Docs Running, and today we're going to do an extended discussion slash review on the new Brooks Glycerin 20 series. So the new series, I've got the Brooks Glycerin 20 on the left hand over here, the Brooks Glycerin GTS 20, which is the stability version over here. I just want to talk about, it's really interesting to see in their lineup that they're starting to branch out and to have the same shoe, but just adding guide rails to it, which is, I think, good, and maybe I think overall it's a good thing. Let's talk about why. So overall, quick review. We have a review on the GTS 20 out. I'm working on a review of the normal 20. This is coming out soon, but honestly, they're pretty similar. Only really big differences, yeah. So they both have DNA Loft version 3, which is a nitrile infused foam. I'm going to say this about both of them. It's not as soft as I was expecting. I was expecting a very pillowy experience. That is not at all it. It's definitely a cushion ride. It's not as soft as I would have hoped. Toe off is really smooth in both these shoes. Little bit of stiffness, but not too bad. Heels are both fairly clunky. They've got this posterior heel flare, which I think if the ride was softer would do well, but it ends up just kind of causing an abrupt heel strike. So most people are heel strikers. I'm certainly one. So it's a little clunky in the rear foot in both of them. But anybody that goes a little farther forward, you're going to have a decent cushion ride. But it's not super soft. DNA Loft, I think, needs some extra work. And it's just a little bit firmer than I would expect. It's still cushioned, but it just doesn't have bounce. You kind of sink into it, and it doesn't sink as much as I would like. So I think the density could be dropped a little bit, and that might also lighten the ride. Ride is actually not too bad in terms of heaviness. I think it comes in 10.1 ounces, 10.5 over here. Don't quote me on that. I should know that. Both 10 millimeter drop. Fit pretty similar, nice uppers. Fit a little more snug up here in the toe box than I would expect, but on the run that feels fine. So a really nice secure fit while still stretching a little bit. Neither of these are the Stealth Fit. I have not tried those, so I cannot comment on those. But there are 4 different versions of the Glycerin. So there's the normal Glycerin 20, there's the Stealth Fit Glycerin 20, there's the GTS version, and then there's the Stealth Fit GTS version. So I'm really interested. They're taking one shoe and making so many options for it, and I kind of like that. And what I want to talk about is, back in my days working and running retail, we were trying to fit somebody, or you yourself are looking for a shoe. When I was I had a lot of stability issues, and so I was kind of stuck in stability shoes until I started transitioning into minimalist stuff, and I could handle a little bit more. But oftentimes I could handle the stability version, but the neutral shoe was not the same, and oftentimes it was better. A lot of times I felt like they put a lot more effort into the neutral shoe because more people were going to be buying them, and the stability was kind of it was like an afterthought. There were some awesome ones out there. I think some of my favorites still was the Adidas Tempo and the Aegis were some great faster shoes. I tend to like faster shoes. There were a couple versions of the Nike Structure that were decent. Some of the original Adrenalines were actually pretty solid, but those were popular shoes. A lot of the other stability shoes were often second thoughts. Nobody was really paying attention. And maybe I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong, but it didn't feel like they were nearly as good or had as much effort as some of the neutral shoes. So now you have all this effort that's put into a neutral shoe, and now you have a stability version of it, which makes it great. And honestly, that makes more options for people, because I've talked about how variety can be helpful. And some days you might need a little extra stability, and some days you might not. Variety is key. How you get it's going to depend on you. If you really like a certain shoe, and you're like, you know what? I've heard great things about the Glycerin. Now you can be confident that the Glycerin GTS is going to be fairly similar. Only difference really between these is the guide rails, and the ride is just a little firmer over in the GTS because there's the post here, there's the guide rails. It's going to be a little firmer because there's more stuff in there. That makes sense. The Glycerin's a little bit softer. There's less stuff in there, right? It's lighter. That makes sense, right? But it's good because then there's more consistency, which goes through the line. And it's also in terms of a spec, the shoe lineup that a company has. Things are getting nuts. Some companies have so many different shoes, it's kind of hard to keep track of what's going on, what's the purpose of each one. But when you simplify it like this, it makes it a lot easier to talk to the customer about. It also makes it to market, right? You've got the Glycerin series, you've got the Ghost, you've got the Launch, you launched GTS, okay, and then you have all the Levitate and the other series there. You got some Tempo, there's plenty of shoes out there, so I can understand why Brooks did this, because it also makes it easier to market, right? You like the Glycerin, maybe you need more stability, Glycerin GTS, boom, you know what you're getting. So I actually like it. I think at first I was there's less variety, but I think it's variety in a better way, because at least you know what you're getting. And it probably makes it easier for the company too, because it's all right, less new lasts we have to create. 'Cause I don't know if all of you know this, but when you are creating, and somebody's going to have to correct me on this because I know I'm going to either say it totally wrong, but I'm going to try to give a best impressions of it. From talking with companies, to create a new shoe, a new last, it's very expensive. It costs a lot of money to change. It even costs a lot of money to change individuals' things as they're developing it, which is why people will usually use a size 9 when they're wear testing or developing shoes, because it's usually the cheapest size to make, okay? Because it's really expensive to start doing other stuff. You want to make sure the shoe's done before you start making a full range of sizes, okay? So you can imagine doing the same thing here. They don't even have to change anything like major to the outsole or the sole, the shape of the shoe, the last. Not the shape, I'm sorry, the last and like some of the development, you just add guide rails on there or add a little post. It makes things a lot better. And to be honest, kind of wish more companies would do that. You're seeing a couple companies do that where the rides aren't actually, or the shoes aren't that different in terms of design. But I think this is good because it keeps things a little bit more simple, because companies are getting out of line with shoes that are fairly similar, but really that may not be necessary. And everybody, variety is good, but at what point does it become obsessive and then hard to sell the shoes? Because then the lines don't continue. Like, you see that, not to pick on people, but you see that with Hoka, with these shoes that come out and then they disappear. That's the last version. They're not the only company. A lot of companies are doing this right now, but I do like this. Yes, these rides are not as exciting as I wanted to. They are just normal, kind of like fairly normal cushion shoes. I was really hoping for something a little bit more special in terms of the ride. Didn't really find it. Probably not going to keep running in these. Just the clunky heel doesn't do it for me. Other people might like the smoother ride up front. That's fine. Brooks, you're doing a good job. But the most positive thing I really think is how they've simplified things and made it better. You want this shoe, you got 4 different versions of it. You can figure out what works for you, and you are going to be confident in what you're getting because they're not that different. They're different enough to address the needs of different people without having a totally new shoe and a customer having to go, okay, I was just in this shoe. What the heck am I getting in with this other one? You're going to know. So I actually like that. It's not a bad idea. I honestly wish, and I've seen these do exist, but not to the public. It's like back in the day, I would have loved to have a posted Pegasus. That would have been great. You didn't need to make a fancy structure. You just post the Pegasus for the Nike line. That would have been great. Okay. But they didn't do that to the public. Why not? That would have been easier. So you don't always need to create a totally new shoe. If you got a good design, sometimes putting a post on it is totally fine. Okay. Posts, guide rails. It's fine. Just clean up this heel. Okay, Brooks, I know you could do a better job than this. This is a little clunky, and I think maybe it's because it's not as soft as you intended it to be. So if you have a posterior heel flare, you got to make sure it compresses. Okay, if not, just bevel this thing, make it smooth. Brooks is known for pretty smooth shoes. Just bevel this thing a little bit more close to the foot, and you should be fine. But that's my extended rant discussion on these, which I do appreciate. I do think, Brooks, you still have some work to do on some of your midsoles, but at least you're going in the right direction. The Nitro Foam is cool. It's interesting. It's going to grab people's attention. It just needs to be refined a little bit. It's exactly the same thing with your racing shoes. But I have faith. I still have faith in Seattle company because I kind of grew up in the Northwest. I went to school up in University of Puget Sound, so I used to go to the only Brooks outlet in the United States, up near Bothell. But I have faith you can figure this out. Keep working. You're on the right track. Some good things are happening. So anybody that's interested, these are decent shoes, but there's still some stuff that needs to go. But if you're looking for some interesting variety and being confident with that variety, the Glycerin ride is going to be good. The launch is going to be similar to that.